Good afternoon, everyone, and congratulations. You've made it to the last session after 2.5 days. I had a quick look at the program, and by the time you get to the end of today, you would have seen 57 listed groups, 9 of which have market caps of less than 15 million. And of those, 7 of them have enterprise values of less than 10 million. And of those, 3 have cash levels of greater than 2 million. We're one of those 3. I hope by the end of the 15 minutes, you'll be convinced of the title of the presentation, that there is compelling value, and this is something unique. I think if you're going to be investing in our sort of end of the spectrum, you want to be investing in something that is at least interesting, doing something a little bit different, and at the end of the day, has potential for a Tier 1 discovery. And I'll get into that in a moment. I'll be making some pretty outlandish statements during the course of the presentation, looking forward, suggesting I'm going to be producing a lot of gold and possibly finding discoveries. So forward-looking statements, disclaimer. So part of that title, compelling. How many gold exploration companies with a market capitalisation of 12 million have cash flow, $4.5 million in the bank, an operating mine, admittedly, with Westgold being the operator, 2 mines being developed, multiple kilometre scale mineralised systems with a huge discovery potential, a very tight capital structure with less than 50 million shares, and has a business philosophy that returns cash to our shareholders when we can afford to do so. And we did that last year when we paid a 3-cent per share dividend. That usually surprises people the most. Are we unique? Well, as far as I'm aware, we're the only group that has a business in Kalgoorlie and a business in Korea. Both bring very different things to our company. Kalgoorlie is a bit of the engine room. That's where we make our cash flow. It's perhaps the unsexy side of the business. It's a mature exploration district, and it has its advantages. There are a lot of mills in the area. We've got a fantastic partner in Westgold. And so there's a lower hurdle to monetise assets in a region like that. South Korea brings something completely different to our story. The reason we're there, fundamentally, is the first-class geology, and it's completely off the radar screen. Most people are very surprised that we're operating there. Again, we have a partner, a bit like we have Westgold in the goldfields. We've got another group called Bluebird Merchant Ventures assisting us over there on our more advanced assets. But what is really exciting is the sort of quality of epithermal targets that we're seeing over there. What's our strategy? It's important for you to understand how we think about things. What we're really doing is we're looking for a Tier 1 deposit, but we're trying to do it in an organically funded way. By Tier 1, I mean large, long life, low cost, something with a very high net present value. And you're probably thinking, well, how on earth are you going to find something like that? Our analogue is Hishikari in Japan. We're currently exploring geology that is not dissimilar, at least in the macro scale, to what we're seeing in Japan. Korea is a little bit older in geological time, but has a lot of the same tectonic framework and a very similar geological context. It just hasn't seen any exploration of any significant amount in the last 30, 40 years. We're going to turn our assets into cash where we can. We're going to try and keep our capital tight. And as you can see, we're developing mine operations such as Cannon, and there's a couple of projects in Korea which are on the way. When we think about Southern Gold as a quality, I call it it was actually quoted as a blue chip explorer by one of the analysts. What's a blue chip explorer? Well, I think it's got good people, it's got fantastic ground, it's got funding, it's got the right capital structure that if you're buying into it, you've got a lot of leverage as a shareholder. It's got the right business philosophy in terms of return. But ultimately, if you're going to play in this space, you've got to be convinced that we've got a really good chance of finding something significant. On the good people side, there's a couple of black silhouettes there. That's because they're very new people and I don't have their photographs. But we've got Peter Bamford joined us just recently, about 10 days ago. Peter's with me here at the conference. If this tweaks your interest, please come and visit us at the booth before we close up today. Meet Peter and myself. I'd love to have a chat. I'll just point out the technical team, though, because this is very important. If you're going after Tier 1 discovery, you need to have people who actually know what they're doing. You'll see there on the far left, Douglas Kerwin is our technical advisor, and he's the real sort of thinking behind the whole South Korean play. And for those of you who don't know Doug, he's a very well-known geologist who was exploration manager for Ivanhoe for quite a few years. He was often attributed to being the discoverer of Oyu Tolgoi or Hugo Drummond and a number of other deposits globally. So he's a geologist who's found several world-class deposits in his career and really knows his stuff. Chris Bowden, the other person you can see there in photo form, he is the exploration manager. He did his PhD on the epithermal rocks in Korea, the only person I'm aware of that's done a PhD on Korean geology. And Justin Gum is our guy who runs the Australian business, who was involved in the discovery of the Kali deposit with Normandy NFM. The dark silhouette, Paul Androvich, he's a new addition to our team. Paul is the General Manager of Exploration and Development. He's ex-Challenger, he's an underground mine geologist and knows his stuff when it comes to narrow vein underground mining. Very quickly, good ground. We've got a big position outside Kalgoorlie, about 260 kilometres. We obviously have our thing with Westgold on the Cannon mine, but we've got a significant position in South Korea. It's about half the size as the one in Kalgoorlie, but 44 graticals in Korea is very significant because it's actually quite hard to get tenure in Korea, so this is actually a very valuable asset in its own right. If you're wondering about South Korea as a jurisdiction, think North Asia, not Southeast Asia. It's got an amazing fiscal regime, they don't have royalties, low corporate tax rates, and there is government funding incentives, particularly for industries that are trying to develop new industries in the regional areas, such as mining. So it's got all the right attitudes, it's got incredible infrastructure, and it's, think of it as a highly industrialised country. It's about half the size of Victoria, with a population of 50 million people. So you can pretty much manufacture anything you want there. Won't dwell on this. This is our capital structure. You can see there, fully diluted, 55 million shares. Our market cap, less than 12 million, and a reasonable cash. So our enterprise value's got a 7 in front of it and a single digit. So we think we're pretty compelling value right now. The organic funding model, you said, I remember the strategy slide, I said that we have this idea of trying to crystallise value where we can. And this is what we've done with Westgold. They mined the open pit. We made a good profit from that, and we've basically been living off that on the last 3 years. We're just about to go underground with Westgold. That's a slightly different deal structure, but at the end of the day, it's a very similar arrangement. They come in, they take the finance and operating risk, and we can crystallise some value from that. In this case, probably a little bit less in the short term than we did in the pit, but who knows? The deposit could keep going at depth, and Westgold have got a 5-year right to mine, so it's possible that we end up getting a good cash flow for several years to come. Bluebird Merchant Ventures are the guys who are helping us to do this organic funding model in Korea. These are really a small team of crusty mining guys out of Manila. They're guys who have been in the industry a very long time. They know their narrow vein underground mining. Colin Patterson might be known to some of you, in particular with his Emperor Mines. He was very, very successful in turning that operation around. And Charles Barclay has also knocked around a long time. So these are guys who really know their stuff. I've brought them in on some of the orogenic gold projects that we have. They're very difficult to explore, very expensive to explore. I'd rather get those guys in underground and save a lot of money and get the cash flow going as soon as possible. Their principal aim is to develop something for capital costs of less than $10 million. And it's important to realise that they're investing their own money in this. So they're really keen to keep their dilution low and really push things along on the production front as soon as possible. Having a closer look at Gubong, just to give you a feel for that, it's a big system. The main part of it is in the bottom left of that left-hand map there, the Gubong mine itself. But the system is over 7 kilometres north-south and a couple of kilometres wide. We believe that ultimately this could be a multi-million ounce field at the end of the day. That's an example of some of the historical maps that we see from the mining that was done back in the past. And that's a closer look at a 3D digitalisation that Bluebird have put together. And you can see there is a very substantial amount of underground mining development. In fact, they believe up to 120 kilometres of underground mine development. You'll see there, incline shaft number 2, that's where that photo is, with a guy putting the ladder in there. So they've basically opened that up, and they're getting access down that decline as we speak. Kochang is the second project they're working on. This is much smaller in scale in terms of the historical mining, but the system is pretty big as well. It's a couple of kilometres long. The access is a lot easier. Bluebird are able to get underground very, very fast. In fact, they've started doing that. It's already been dewatered. So they should get to the vein face very, very quickly. Bottom line, these guys will move very, very quickly, much faster than I think the investor community believes, and it's the sort of bread and butter projects that they do. In parallel with Bluebird dealing with our orogenic projects, what's really exciting in Southern Gold is our epithermal targets. So basically, I've got an exploration team in country looking at these epithermal mineralised systems. And we're uncovering very, very high grades and very, very good systems. So Walyu is one example. I've just put a couple of tables in there to give you a feel for the sort of grades that we're returning. What we have is a system of multiple epithermal veins, about 100, 200 metres wide, sitting on the top of a mountain. And we're talking up to sort of 0.1% silver and half an ounce gold in some cases. So in many respects, this is a high-grade, high-level epithermal system. And we got underground just recently. We put in a ladder system so we could actually start to sample within the old workings. There's a lot of ore still in the walls. You can see some of those grades from some of those in situ veins. You can see we're getting circa 10 grams per tonne gold and 500 grams per tonne silver, about half an ounce dirt. And what's important to realise with this is that it's actually occurring at the top of a mountain, so we are just touching literally the tip of the iceberg. What we don't know yet is where or how deep these things go, but what we do know is that in epithermal systems, high gold silver systems typically become higher gold, lower silver as you go deeper. So the fact that we're getting very high gold grades at this height, at this level, is extremely encouraging. Hampiong is an example of another. That's our epithermal project number 2. Hampiong is another one. This one is something we put out just recently. We've just got the tenure granted through the Mine Registry Office in Korea. These are very different beasts. These are sort of 4 or 5 metre wide veins. If you look at the map on the right-hand side, you can see that the sort of grades we're getting at surface are around 4 to 13 grams per tonne. So we're chipping ore grade at surface, basically. There's been zero drilling in this district. There's been very little exploration. So this is like a virgin new discovery. We haven't drilled it yet. We'll be drilling it next month. And for your reference, just so you can put it into scale, you can see a photograph at the bottom of the map, which is an aerial view of the Unsan mine in Korea, which is the one operating mine in Korea down to the south, about 60 kilometres away. You can see there, that's actually the photograph to scale on that map. And you can sort of see how you can easily fit an epithermal project in the scale of what we're talking about. So, bringing that all together, enterprise value of less than $8 million, and I did say at the beginning, compelling value. Every managing director, of course, says that. In this case, I think it's true because we've got good cash flow, we've got an underground gold mine being operated by Westgold, we've got experts bringing on other mines on track in Korea. We're exploring incredibly exciting epithermal systems such as Walyu, Hampiong, and a whole bunch of other things we're working on with Doug Kerwin. And we've got the right capital structure and business model to look after our investors. We're also monetising our assets and doing some savvy M&A as we go along with this project. So we've done a few placements I've done 2 placements in the last 3 years, both at premiums, one at 35 cents and one at 38.6 cents. We're currently trading at 25. So that's it. Thank you very much, Jerry.